You know, for something to be considered an antique, it needs to have been around for at least 100 years. Revered for either its beauty, design, or overall symbolic nature. Many things can become attached to those things in 100 years. It's a very long time. So let's grab a blanket, turn off your lights, and listen to 4 true scary stories about haunted antiques. Where will you be in 100 years? Antique Haunting. Hey, I would like to start by putting out the history of the house where the incident has taken place. The house was built in 1892 and was built next door to an area known to be a spot where Aboriginals were taken and killed, either through hanging, being shot, or just as often torture. The home is on a hill and at least 10 kilometers away from any other properties. It's a Victorian home with old-style ventilation and thin walls. There are 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, basement, and attic. The people living in the house were me. Michelle was 14 at the time, my sister Mary, 17, my brother Tom, 5, and our parents. When we first moved into the house, we thought it was perfect. It was large, roomy, and had no neighbors close by. The realtor, while showing us around the home, had informed us in a joking manner that apparently former residents had heard gunshots at night and had thought they heard people crying outside. So we moved in about 2 years ago, and at first nothing happened for about a month. Then we started to hear muffled cries and screams coming from the field behind the house. This freaked us out a bit at first, but after a while we got used to it. We owned a local antique store in the town not too far away, about 20 kilometers away, which deals in old furniture and jewelry. But one month, we got a bunch of Aboriginal antiques given to us with spearheads made of stone, necklaces, and a small wooden item about 3 months ago. My mom thought the necklace looked interesting and decided to keep it, but after she brought it home, we have been hearing things we would rather not have. It started with angry voices in the vents, items being moved, and has recently evolved into banging on the walls, and one time, what sounded like rain on the roof. The roof is made of tin, when it wasn't even raining outside. And this morning, my mom ran into the house after seeing large black men standing on the field behind the house. Please help us. We have taken the necklace and buried it in the field to try to please them, and nothing has happened. We buried it 3 weeks ago, and they are still doing what they were doing before. Please help us. What should we do? P.S. My mom said, the men seemed to be naked, with only a dark piece of cloth or animal skin covering them up. A haunted antique coat rack. This past Sunday, July 27, 2008, my younger brother, his girlfriend, and I set out on a little ride to an antique store in a little town outside Windsor. We always see the store from the highway because of the bright red roof, and it looked pretty nice. I thought it was great. Maybe I would find another piece of furniture or something like that. Amber thought it was great too, since she was looking for a half-moon table for her living room. We left at around 11 and arrived around 11:30. It wasn't far from where I live, because I live at the end of Windsor. We thought it would take about an hour, but it didn't. As soon as I stepped into this place, I thought it was great. We all did. It was like a mall, so much to look at. I walked in, and to the left side of me, ahead of me, there was a coat rack. I've been looking for a coat rack here in Windsor, but haven't found anything I liked. I walked over to check it out. It was so sturdy, heavy, and an old and a good price. This was one I wanted. Amber and Greg went to the right of the mall. I didn't see them for a long time because this place was huge. Finally, Amber found a 3-tier table and yelled at me, "Hey Judy, I got myself a nice table." I walked over and told her that I found a coat rack. She thought that was great because she knew I had been wanting one. We packed everything in the van and went home about 3 hours later. The first stop was my house. My husband was going out golfing when we left, and upon arrival, seen the coat rack and thought it was pretty sturdy and nice, an old antique. I cleaned it up with oil and even tightened the screws a bit on the claws to hold the coats. I set it in our foyer near the front door. Now, I have bought other pieces of furniture at antique auctions and stores and have never, ever believed that a piece of furniture could be haunted or something. I thought I was going crazy thinking such a thing. That evening, while in the family room watching TV, a screeching noise came out of the wooden coat rack. It was so loud and piercing, like it was stretching. It was very creepy. My dog even looked up and stared at it. Then, there were noises from it like crackling wood burning in fire, like a bonfire or something. The noises were loud. I thought to myself, this is coming from a piece of wood? Now, my husband took Monday and Tuesday off of work this week, so he was home when the next incident happened. He has not experienced this yet, and I didn't tell him because I thought it could be from the oil. I was sitting at my computer. He was walking up the stairs to the foyer, and my dog was with me, sitting on the living room floor. All of a sudden, this coat rack made the loud screeching noise again, and then a big crackle came from it. I looked at the coat rack because it was right in front of me and it was moving back and forth, just moving. I think the noise was so loud and long, it made it wobble back and forth. "What in the heck was that?" my husband says. I started to laugh and said, "It's the coat rack." He said the coat rack. Later on in the evening, my husband Will checked out the coat rack, looking at it closely. He said it could be the wood from the oil you gave it. I said, "Will, we have so much wood in here and have never heard anything like that, especially coming from a piece of wood." He didn't say anything. That night, while in the family room watching TV, it did it again. Other noises came from it too, and sort of traveled to my kitchen, crackling like the wood was in the kitchen now. It was strange, but I did get an uneasy feeling from this. So did my little dog. She would stare at it from the living room and then look around as if she's seen something that I couldn't see. The third day this happened again all night, from 12 at night to 4 a.m. in the morning, on and off, on and off. It was ridiculous and very annoying. I have never had noises in my home like this. Crackling wood noises coming from this wood, traveling to the kitchen now. At night while I was sleeping, it would wake me up. That's how loud it was. I didn't want the coat rack any longer. Today, July 31st, 2008, I called Amber up and told her the situation and to come by and pick up this coat rack to take to the store she works at. She said, "Sure." I mentioned to her and my brother about this coat rack making awful noises. She said that sometimes when you buy an antique, there could be something attached to it. I said, "Get out of here. Nothing ever happened with pieces I bought in the past." She said, "Yes, this could happen." I told my mom, and she said if you get rid of it, bring it over to her house. I told her I don't want it in your home. It'll freak you out, and you don't need to hear these noises it makes. It's pretty creepy, Mom. The noises travel as well. She said, "Really?" And I said, "Yes, trust me, Mom. I want to get rid of it." Amber said to me, "So I guess I won't call my sister or my mom to see if they want it." I told her, "Don't give it to anyone, you know." She says, "Okay." My dog lies down in the foyer on the floor and hasn't done this in 4 days. She would stare at the coat rack and then move her head as if watching something move while lying down in the living room. She's never acted like this before. I guess she didn't like it either. When I got rid of it, it looked like my little dog had a smile on her face. And tonight my dog is lying down again in the foyer. Strange. Poor thing. Maybe she sensed something from it too. I called Amber this evening and I told her I haven't had any noises in my home since you came and picked it up. My dog is lying down in the foyer on the floor, and yet the heavy feeling around the home is completely gone. I'm so glad it won't be in my house tonight. It woke me and my husband up last night, on and on and on. We could not believe the first noise coming from it. The others after were loud, but they weren't anything like the first big noise. It will last for about 30 seconds. While I'm typing this right now, there is no heaviness in my house, and no crackling coming from the kitchen or the foyer. My dog is again in the foyer and not afraid to lie down there again. It's so nice and so peaceful. Looks can deceive. I just have a few questions for you guys. Can antiques have ghosts attached to them? I mean, right now I would say yes. The last 4 days with this coat rack have not been very pleasant. A very uneasy feeling we had here at our home. My husband even feels better too, and for sure, my dog is once again back to normal. Noticing my dog not lying down in the foyer the last 4 days caught my attention as well. Since ridding of this coat rack, everything seems to be back to normal. The antique store basement. I know that it is very difficult to believe in a ghost story you haven't experienced yourself, but I can only relate my experience to the best of my abilities. It was so intense that I felt compelled to share it. I have in the past had some experiences with the paranormal, but never one quite as scary as my experience in the antique store basement located in small northern Illinois town. It was a nice summer day, and I was looking at the antiques with my mom in a store that I later found was once a hardware store. We both went down the stairs to the basement. As I was walking, I felt extremely dizzy and could not avoid the strange idea of my head smashing into the pavement I was walking on. We were making our way to the back of the basement, and my eyes were drawn to the corner of the ceiling, as if I was watching something move back and forth between them. I had another odd thought of a tiger pacing back and forth. I don't know why, its shoulder blades moving swiftly above its head. I was ignoring these thoughts as we got to the end of the room though. I suddenly heard a man's deep voice slowly work up to a savage scream. Get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. It sounded like a man going insane with anger and grief. It was a voice that is best described as tormented. The hair stood up on the back of my neck, and chills ran up and down my back. I noticed that there was no one but us in the basement, and turned to my mom to quietly suggest that we leave. Before I heard a response, I turned to see my mother literally running away through the basement and up the stairs. I could not stop myself from yelling, "Wait for me! Don't leave me alone! Wait! Mom, wait!" Needless to say, we walked straight out of the store and started a long and silent trip home. Weirdly enough, we didn't talk about why we ran like lunatics, and the moment was nearly forgotten. Up until 2 weeks later, when I finally had the courage to bring it up to her, I just had to know. At first, neither of us were very comfortable with it, but my late grandmother, mother, and myself seemed to have somewhat psychic abilities. As I said earlier, I have experienced a few things before with and without my mother, so it was odd for me to not bring it up earlier. Without telling her any details, I asked her if she happened to hear anybody yelling that day. She stopped immediately what she was doing and answered me. She said yes. I asked her to please repeat what she heard that day, and when she did, I realized it was exactly what I had heard that day as well. Even the crazed tone and rising anger with each get out was precisely as I had heard it. She still refuses to say any more about that day, and I'm left to wonder alone what I had experienced and why that happened. I'm so curious that I tried to look up the history of the town, which is actually very sparse. I did find that a man named George had shot himself in the head around the time that the store was in use, but I couldn't confirm anything for sure. It was too long ago. It was in the history books. I myself continue to have various paranormal experiences. Still, nothing comes close to the surprise and terror that I had experienced that day. Antique store. To preface this, there's some things I want to clarify first. I myself have always been a skeptic. I've always been very skeptical about everything, actually. I am someone who believes that you believe what happened to you. And I need to experience things myself to be truly convinced, especially when it comes to anything paranormal or out of the ordinary per se. So back to the story. Growing up in an old farmhouse, it was one of the oldest in my town, there were always the unusual creaking sounds of the floors and the stairs, even doors closing on their own, and lights flickering. These were always dismissed as the house just settling in. Now fast forward 10 years, I meet my now husband, and he shares with me all of the strange, ghostly experiences that he has had throughout his life. I always believed him, but never fully without having my own experiences. Like I said before, I was always a skeptic. Sometimes the stories seemed so far-fetched that the only thing that made me believe was his belief, his way of conviction, and his way of telling me these stories. About 2 months after we were married, we were living with his parents, and I got a job working at an antique store in our town that is in a house that is at least 120 years old. I mean, the thing was gorgeous, big, beautiful, and grand house where I always imagined someone of importance or money living there. It's a typical big house with a foyer, parlor, dining room, and kitchen downstairs, and 5 huge bedrooms and 1 bath upstairs. There was a grand staircase in the foyer directly across from the front door that had bells to notify of anyone entering or even leaving the shop. Once upstairs, there was a small banister along the hallway, which ran straight down the middle of the house with a narrow back stairway leading down to the kitchen area. It was frickin' gorgeous. The back door to this house was not used as a customer entrance, but only by me when coming and leaving for work. Therefore, the door itself was always dead-bolted. I'm absolutely positive of that. I worked by myself all day long, though, never seeing the owner, as she had another small shop across town. The days were always very long and boring, and I actually caught up on a lot of reading and quite a few naps to be awakened by the bells when a customer actually came in, which, to be honest, took hours. On this particular day, however, it was around 2 or 3, and only a few people had come in. At one point, there were about 4 people in all at once. It's actually a rush, so to speak, for me. I helped them find their purchases and such, and they left. So knowing that my chances of anyone else to talk to was slim to none, I called my husband at home since he didn't work that day. Just as we started to talk, I heard the hall floor upstairs creaking, and then I heard very clearly 2 women talking about the Victrola that was along the small banister at the top of the stairs. I told my husband that I would have to call him back, as I had somehow missed some customers. I always like to be an eyeshot of people, as many like to pocket small items. I went up the front staircase to find nobody there. Empty. I looked in the 2 front bedrooms at the front of the house and they were completely empty. I continued down the hallway to the back of the house, looking into every single room and every single closet, calling out, "Hello!" Okay, they must be downstairs already via the back stairwell, so I start down it to the kitchen, and about 3 stairs down, I feel a cool breeze. It was gentle, but enough to give me goosebumps on my arm. I dismissed it as a draft, even though where the air conditioners were positioned upstairs, it could not have been from them. I make the circle back to the parlor room off to the side of the foyer where my desk was, checking along the way, and there was nobody in the house. They couldn't have gone out the front door, as I mentioned before. The bells themselves would ring. I am scared out of my mind now, the hair on my neck standing up. I don't know if it was the fear of something paranormal, but I ran to the telephone to call my husband. I quickly told him my experience, and told him to get up there and sit with me for the rest of the day right now. Luckily, he was only 6 blocks away and was there in no time. He snickered at me and told me, "I told you that spirits and ghosts are real." I have been a believer ever since. When I retold my story to my boss, the owner, she said that little things like that were always happening. She'd hear voices and have things moved. One time, she said that the old-fashioned cash register dinged open by itself. After the antique store was closed, the house became a lawyer's office and is now a residential home. I haven't spoken with anyone who has been in the house since, but I often wonder if others have heard or experienced anything. Since this particular experience, I have had a few more which I will share another time. I know this probably isn't a very exciting story, but I feel it is my first true paranormal experience, and I just wanted to share it. Thanks for reading.